Gwerm's mansion, our next place to go. This mansion, this manor, in the city's wealthy quarter looks grand, but not overly opulent. It didn't attract a lot of enemy attention during the demonic invasion, perhaps due to the fact that its guards and servants had fled right after the first attacks, and demons are usually more interested in living victims than, well, in their empty houses. So let's go to Holger's mansion with Camellia. Oh, what's that? Failed ritual site. Can we get there? Scars of an explosion mar the ground here. Barely visible magical runes surround the crater, while components of a failed ritual lie scattered nearby. You can procure some reagents for creating consumable items here. Sure, let's do it. Blood. Nice.
We will prevail. We shall overcome. Do not hold back.
That was a big ambush. Two main monsters, two smaller monsters. I mean, it's interesting that we... Ah, they were at last. You certainly took your time. I thought perhaps you got lost on the way here. I was already regretting not drawing you a map. Horg's relief is palpable, even though through his drowsing. Ah, it's a tragedy to see one's house in such a sorry state. I always had a few guards in my service, you know. I hope these blockheads died honorably and didn't simply flee at the first sign of danger. Holgos turns toward the corridor with a pensive expression on his face. My manor, you see, contains several items that are of great value to me. I wish to retrieve them before they are discovered by my fellow citizens, who in the current chaos seem to have taken to thieving and marauding like ducks to water. So here's what I want you to do. Take a stroll through my house, peek into the rooms, and if you find anyone, kill them on the spot. That'll teach any other opportunists to stay away from Gwerm's manor. While I was standing here by the entrance, I could clearly hear the sound of someone rooting around inside, and possession of mine you find in there you can keep. Any. It's all as good as lost to me anyway. When you're sure the house is empty, give me a signal from my study window. Wave a torch around or something like that. You can decide when you get there. What are these valuable items that are worth risking your life by going back to the manor? Wait. Oh, sorry, I pressed the spacebar. I hate this. You're sad about your things. Because of them, you want us to kill people. Don't lecture me about right and wrong, kid. If I gives you some comfort, let me assure you that marauders are not innocent little lambs, far from it. They would gladly kill you to get their hands on my possessions, mark my word. You're not coming with me? Coming in with me? Oh, the very notion. You think I hire guards to do my biddings? It's just so I can put myself in danger alongside them? No. I've taken on my fair share of risk already today. But all the same, you took the risk of coming here, even though you were well aware of the danger. What is it that draws you here so strongly, like a moth to a flame? Camellia, that's enough. Ooh, it seems I had a sore spot. She quickly covers the smile that flits across her face. Alrighty, I understand. Well, get on with it. Are you here waiting for a special order? I shall wait your signal. Marcus pauses. And good luck in there, I suppose. We don't say luck, we say good hunting.
I'll just
They
have to
will
resort
break
to
against our resolve.
So it comes to this!
I will guide us.
Onion soup. Oh. Yes, with good cheese and with good bread, onion soup can be magnificent. I mean, classic French onion soup, of course.
The deed is done.
Tickle, Miraculix wants to know your location. Chains, handcuffs, shackles, a collection to rival prisons. What? Interesting. Set of collars of various size. Collars? What is this? Is this a sex dungeon or what? Box filled with a variety of whips and floggers. Yeah, it definitely is a sex dungeon, what the heck?
I will see this through. Let us press on. Stand with
Spirits
me.
demand your blood.
Without risk!
You've made your choice!
You are today's sacrifice.
Ay. On the nature of divine. Yeah, we read the last sentence last time. Can a mortal become a god? Is the very idea blasphemy? Warhammer does not agree with you. Science relies on experience, where there may be evidence presented in support, but when science encounters theology, it recoils. The term evolution has no application to the divine spark that illuminates dull matter in incomprehensible ways. The foremost example is angels, to whom we owe the existence of our virtuous mortal souls, which brings us to a paradox. The mortal soul transforms into an immortal essence. There are many such breathtaking events, which each promise a connection to the divine. Sunny Sarenrae is perfect proof of this. The Starstone trial desecrated divinity, turned it into a god's exam, where any trickster with a handful of spells, who can avoid some traps in a deadly maze, may arise to divinity. Is the nature of divinity, then, so sacred indeed? Search of Joy, Confessions of a Heretic. I take a deep breath and stand still. I long to absorb every moment of joy. Inhale the evaporation of someone else's soul from their thickening blood. What? The border between reality and dream fades. It seems that everyone beyond the wall can hear the throbbing in my head, but it's only my fantasy. A ringing silence fills the room. The fifth sacrifice has been made. My mistress, the most beautiful of goddesses, will be happy. I will take care of everything. Fragrant flowers, cut at the climax of their beauty, are now a part of the masterpiece, which is worthy of Shalene herself. So what if the narrow-minded priests rejected me and my gift? I serve the never-fading rose herself, not the worms that bite into her stem and suck at her life-giving juices. It won't be long now before I finish my job. I've already found the material. Her eyes are grey and hair is dark blonde. She's fading into the dirt. I will rewrite her history. Cooking Almanac of the Inner Sea by Jubilos Tnathropple. It is perhaps Avistan's most popular dish. In the capital of Cheliax, it is baked in a cheese crust. Oh my goodness. Thank you. I want this too. Sprinkled with lemon juice. Very good. The local fishermen use a different cooking method in Kradira, which is on the opposite end of Avistan. There you will find it finely chopped and mixed cold ingredients. With cold ingredients. The exact origin of the dish remains unknown, but it is generally believed to have been invented in Andorra and spread around the globe by seafarers and pilgrims. It's served as a plain pâté, it is most basic version. To prepare it, soak the herring in spiced marinade, then mince it into a spreadable paste. Add a mashed tart green apple, hard-boiled quail eggs, the freshest butter you can find, and half an onion. The list of ingredients may vary in the inland regions. In the region of Nirmatlas, beef or lamb is used for this snack. I once tasted a highly original and equally disgusting version cooked with milk and mushrooms on the borders of Dodoma. Okay. And the next book. Secret Overlord, the Essence of the World Order. Until recently, we knew this world as it was described in books and stories. A sewer torn apart by hyenas that separate us with nations and borders, oppress us with extortion and lies, and assert their authority and power. However, someone else's hand rules these slaves who act like masters. It's a threat far more intimidating than a handful of arrogant fools. Our lands are secretly ruled by the most ancient creatures of Golarion, the inhabitants of the Everdark Depth, who know both past and future. Our people are led along a path they cannot see, and do not have the power to lead, to an end known only to the hidden masters. Some insist that the signs are purely coincidental, but they point to a vast conspiracy. Only a fool can fail to see how the myriad coincidences weave into a great cobweb. Or they've submitted their very will and sworn their allegiance to our unseen masters in the depth. A battle in the Valley of Fire by Lurus Aldori. Argun was knocked flat. He laid gasping, arms spread, lump of rage rising in his throat. He remembered his dream. Black soil, red ravens in the empty sky. Their coarse croaks ringing in his ears like a taunt. Jarrell would never take Roston, never. Aldery sprang to his feet, as if the blood-soaked soil was driving him forward. With a cry of rage, the Sword Lord rushed into the battle. The sky turned scarlet with blood as he furiously chopped off his enemies' heads. The scarlet horizon drew closer, and his roar nearly drowned out the sound of battle. Argun looked to the sky, and a fiery blast descended upon him. These were the no ravens that circled above him. The fearsome breath of the red dragons of Chorrel melted the soldier's armor, and turned living flesh to ash and dust. Well, that was a quick end. Prodigal sons. It's done, I said. Mlicken studied me with narrow eyes. You look awfully clean. Where's the knife? In answer, the first shouts went up from the inn. Fire! Screamed Ilna, and then other voices joined hers. In an instant, Milliken's entrepreneurial instincts took over, and he sprang for the door, tossing the crossbow aside. Outside, the roof of the inn was already smoking oily black against the sunset, flame licking through the thatching in places. With a scream of pain, Milliken ran for the creek. I looked to Fargas. Needing no further cue, we each grabbed up handfuls of supplies and sprinted off in the opposite direction. After 10 minutes of leaped brambles and ducked branches, we stopped to catch our breath. Back the way we'd come, the smoke was still visible, though the sounds had faded to just the faint and frantic pealing of a church bell. That was close, Fargas said, leaning against a tree and breathing hard. Agreed, I puffed, staring down at the cloak full of bread that now made up our sole possessions. Then the sound of the bell reminded me of something. Guide for Travelers, Hunters and Explorers of the River Kingdoms, Volume 5, Monsters and Beasts. Will-o-wisp. An amusing glowing ball, which looks harmless and it doesn't arouse any natural suspicion. Pretends to be a guiding light in the marshes, but leads travelers to certain death. The agonizing fear of their victims is this monster's nourishing dinner. If you manage to resist their tricks, make sure you have some electrical protection. The monster electrocutes any visitors it fails to lure into terror. Werewolves prefer to hunt in groups and attack lone travelers. It's entirely possible that a Varisian camp or troop here could turn into a pack of bloodthirsty lycanthropes under cover of darkness. Ordinary weapons stand a little chance against them, but a silver blade greatly increases your chances of survival. Geralt of Rivia approves. Primals. Powerful creatures of the primal realm occasionally visit this world for amusement. It's best to stay out of a primal's way. Don't fight it, it's extremely dangerous, but if a like is at stake, resort to cold steel. On the nature of the divine, we had that already. Next one. The Notes of a Traveling Priest. Ilchuliak by Tyron Dean. Imagine this. A girl, whose name I shall not disclose, comes to town and immediately purchases the most expensive suburban villa. This newcomer spends unfathomable amounts of charity, even returning several tragically perished citizens to life at her own expense. She's very young, her rough speech and manners indicate that she's not of noble birth. This leaves the whole town wondering, how did this young lady come into possession of such a huge fortune, and why does she spend it so eagerly? Those secrets were revealed to me when I was invited to the mysterious girl's house to provide healing services. The young lady reluctantly displayed something she'd been hiding from everyone. Terrible acid burns. She forestalled any questions with a single word. Ilchuliak. The monstrous black dragon's name was well known in the River Kingdoms. She'd lived in the regions for hundreds of years, inspiring terror and emptying settlements. Many experienced dragon hunters attempted to put a stop to her, and all perished. No one knew where Ilchuliak's lair was or where she would strike next. The wounds Ilchuliak's acid breath left on my patient's body were terrible, but her soul was hurt much worse. The girl and her friends had found the lair of the dragon. Oh, that's a long story. They could have gathered hunters to destroy the monster, but they instead kept silent in search of profit. When the lair's mistress was absent, they would carry treasure out, little by little. Ilchuliak suspected something was happening, so she set an ambush for the thieves, and they were dealt with cruelly. My patient pretended to be dead, surviving while the dragon devoured the bodies of her friends. She had much gold left at her disposal, but it came with a burden of memories that recalled devastated cities and countless people burned by acid. Unable to tolerate the guilt, the girl tried to atone for ill-gotten gains with good deeds. I was able to heal her physical wounds. When we parted, she told me she planned to spend the rest of her wealth organizing an expedition to Ilchuliak's lair to end the beast. I recently heard rumor that the villa has been abandoned for quite some time now. It's possible the owner left for other lands, but my heart tells me her bones lie in the lair of Ilchuliak, that winged terror and plague to the River Kingdoms. Fairy Tales of Avistan. A long, long time ago, in a time before remembering, there was a furious god known as Ruvaguk, a terrible giant worm with 1,000 teeth and claws. He devoured every world in his path, one after another. With 1,000 teeth? That's not enough. But the great gods were displeased with the beast and delivered unto Ruvaguk their scourge. Many laid down their feuds to combine forces. Mighty Torak, brilliant Sarenre, vicious Asmodeus, crafty Calistria, cold-blooded Pharasmar, and many, many others. Together they faced Ruvaguk as he arrived to swallow Golarion. Some sort of world worm. The goddess of the sun, Sarenre, forbade Urvaguk's death, and so the gods imprisoned the fiend deep in the ground, shackled and sleeping. Asmodeus himself would keep the keys to his bonds. The terrible monster remains there still, asleep in his prison. Whenever Urvaguk rolls over in his sleep and scratches his back against his prison walls, the earth trembles, and volcanoes spit fire. That's an interesting explanation to why volcanoes happen. Tectonic plate movement? No. These gods don't need that. They have a big ass worm imprisoned in the earth mantle. Okay. Loot. Adventures of a fearless crusader. Briggy, the sausage maker. Now that's a story that I can enjoy. By Berthymel from Pytrax, the Sharp Word Publishing Company. For dinner, the New York Times wounded... No, that doesn't work. Because of Sharp Word, that was a pun, but never mind. For dinner, the wounded were served cabbage soup. This didn't surprise them in the slightest. They'd had the same dish for dinner for a week. The hospital's residents used to be lucky enough to get potatoes and even turnips sometimes, but about a month ago, the Knights of the Order of the Thrice Holy Shining Sun and Dissipating Darkness, scimitar of our beloved goddess Sarenre, actually shot a catapult the wrong direction because their names were so confusing they didn't know what was left and right. Anyway, and annihilated the cart of the farmer who supplied the hospital with these vegetal delicacies. Ever since, the wounded only had cabbage soup for dinner, occasionally with a bit of protein when the cockroach crawled into the pot. Okay, after enjoying their delightful dinner, the wounded stuffed their smoking pipes with something which rather more resembled hay than tobacco. Their bad habits demanded inhalation of some smoke or other mealtime, but with these practical matters happily resolved, they fell to talking. "Which demon do you think is the most dangerous?" asked Wuzlich, the Sibir man, scratching the stub of his leg with the stub of his arm. "I think it's Abricandulus. Those monsters are cunning and sneaky, almost like Varisians, and their teeth are even sharper. Look." He illustrated his point for his comrades by holding up his remaining fingers, 2.5 of them. "It depends the way you look at it," answered Gregory the artillerist, though she could hardly look at it at all. Her eyes were covered with bandages. "Your Abricandulus are easy pickings, but Baylor's are a different thing. He hits you with his whip and ka-chang, your eyes pop out." She waved her pipe energetically, casting its content into Wuzlich's face, while the latter was coughing and brushing himself. Briggy joined the conversation. "Baylors and Bricantulus are all right, I suppose, but I'd say there isn't a demon in the world scarier than a regular louse. Of course, the other demons can teleport places, but the louse doesn't even need to do that. Wherever you look is already there." Then he stuck his hand under his shirt, pulled out the subject of his speech from somewhere in his armpit, and demonstrated it to his friends. You can run away from a big demon with a whip, but who can run away from lice? They sting everyone from the foot soldier to the general. Even the queen herself isn't immune. Now you might say it doesn't do much harm. After all, how much blood can one louse drink? But I'm telling you, think how much soldiers' blood they've drunk all together. It's got to be a whole sea, wouldn't you think? More than all the demons in the abyss. And if anyone tells me a louse isn't a demon, then to them. Could a monster like that come from anywhere besides the abyss? Okay. Well, if you think about lice and other nasty creatures, the ones that want your blood, they are everywhere where there is water. Well, they've probably drank a whole sea worth of blood or more now. Okay. And another. The Crusades as seen by ordinary folk by Tullius Mara. A story recorded by the great and extraordinary story writer Tullius Mara from the words of Warren, a peasant from the village of Darkforts. Want to know why they called Genty the Crusader? This is what happened. Listen to me, kid. Ogar, the farmer, died, leaving 3 sons. The 2 older ones divided the land and lived their lives, and Genty, the youngest one, was a square peg in a round hole, as they say. He only knew how to bask under a tree and eat pies. What was he to do? Where could he apply himself? So he got a rusty old sword from the blacksmith's backyard, mounted his skinny horse, and rode off over the hills and far, far away. Sooner or later he came to a castle. Inside it there was a knight's wife, sitting round waiting for her husband to return from the crusades. So our Genty sat down next to her, saying, "Fair lady, your husband is a great man and you deserve all compassion. I am a crusader myself, and used to fight the horrible spawn of the world wound," and so on he rambled. He sat behind the stone walls for a month, gained 10 pounds, became even more well-groomed, and in the end looked like a baron. But he grew bored of the knight's wife. She was always pale and sad, and cried for days, praying to Sir Henry. So, Genty waved her goodbye and went on his way. He rode and saw a mill on a river, and a miller's wife, rosy cheeks, plump as a partridge. Our Genty cozied up to her, saying, "Lady Miller's wife, does your husband happen to be at home?" "No, my good sir. Last year the Fae dragged him into the river," she said. So Genty invited himself to stay at the mill. He lay on a soft bed, eating pies, drinking beer, and walking around the village. He had some nerve, told everyone at the village tavern what a seasoned crusader he was. He feared no demon and promised to show them what's what. So one moonlight night, when he was huffing and puffing on the window, he felt her grabbing his back so strongly that he couldn't stand it. He looked down, and there she was, a crone, horrible like a skeleton, with a crooked nose, eyes like embers, a hollow stomach, ribs sticking out, and claws instead of nails, stinking of a ripened grave. Try as he might, Genty couldn't get away. The crone held him tight, hissing, "Where are you going, my sweet crusader? Come on, put your bun in my oven." "What?" And she stuck out her long tongue and licked her rotten teeth. Somehow, Genty wiggled away, leaving plenty of his skin and meat on her claws. He ran from the mill in a panic, ran all the way to the village, naked and bleeding, so he's running and yelling, "Demons! Demons!" while the locals gathered with their axes and pitchforks and came to the mill. But it was empty. The crone was gone. Then they'd find an ugly corpse in the basement, though. They knew it was the miller's wife by her hair and clothes. That's when Genty lost his mind. Now he sits under his brother's windows, staring into the distance, saying, "The demons are coming! The demons are coming!" That's the only thing he'll say. Well, that's still a better love story than Twilight, so whatever. Loot. What do we have here? Skull of Doom. Hello there. Shadows of Absalom by Pax Grometra. Nwan Quant peeped through a slit in the window shutter. The visitor was staggering at the porch. Nwan had promised himself many centuries ago that he'd never have to deal with halflings again. After the case of the Clockwork Head and the story with Frodo, it was just bothering. Even the bleaching is better than some adventurers. Anyway, however, there was something disturbing in the visitor's appearance. Something was wrong. "What do you say, Gexy?" His assistant sat at the next window with yarn and knitting needles in her hands. "Look at his clothes. They're second-hand. He's a hobo." "He is, but you're not quite right. Look at his feet." Gexy looked, trying to make out at least something in faint light of the lantern above the door. He was shackled. Rather than answering, the gnome stepped toward the door. "We shall need a doctor." As if to prove his words, the guests faltered and collapsed onto their knees and fell head first onto the doorstep. What is that story? But I mean, what purpose does it serve? I need a second to drink some water and sneeze in my nose before I continue. Alrighty, for the third night in a row, I've dreamt of the Grey Gardeners knocking at my door. I cannot believe that it is my turn to be cut down by a blade washed in the blood of 1,000 revolutions, as a wave of popular outrage washes over me, as my head tumbles down the steps of the scaffold. We take up the sword, and by it we shall perish. Once we struck down the imperial scum, but now it is we who must face the blade. The insurgent beast called revolution will never be sated. It needs new victims. This time it's my comrades and I. The cruelty of the hoarders in power echoes the cruelty of the paupers, though intoxicated by their own freedom. We wanted change. Well, here it is. This is a country now of mad fanatics, fighting the treacherous past every day. Former friends are today's foes. Russia wants to know your location. My workshop has been converted into a secret headquarters. If I could do it all over again, I would repair to my easel and refrain from the cause that has sent me down this path. Are we finally done with all the books? Oh, thank goodness. Ah, there's nothing here, right? Okay.
That is quite a discovery. Let us not hesitate. I have managed.
Sophisticated instruments of torture. The purpose of some of them can only be guessed at. What the heck?
Our path leads on.
A heavy blunt object was clearly used to try to break down the door. The lock is broken and the door cannot be opened. What is here? The door to the garden is blocked. Opening it is currently impossible. Currently,
Into
No
the
time for
fray!
debates.
Strike as one. Attack! The deed is done.
Third. Okay.
I will guide us. Godspeed.